1-800-449-8255. Just Clark the Shark. We just heard a commercial there from our sponsors. And this morning, I want to talk about the James Gang. I'm going to pick up right where we left off before here on the Clark the Shark show. And I want to say good morning to everybody right here from the Sharky with the golden voice. I'm like homeless right now. And I'm kind of like that black guy. Remember on the YouTube, the guy, he's like, when you're listening to Golden Oldies, you're listening to me. Well, that's like me, Clark the Shark. And I have a special guest this morning. I know you've all heard of him. You all love him. We all love Paul McCartney. Paul, come on in here, buddy. Like, what happened before? What were these technical difficulties? I don't know. It somehow keeps happening with my Android here, or Samsung, Verizon. It's a fucking piece of shit. At 1-800-449-8255, the Clark the Shark show. But I'm coming to you this morning from the Golden EIB Sharkerphone. And I want to talk about this 1969 album by the James Gang. That I love this album. I'm not too particularly wild about Joe Walsh. But I love this fucking album, 1969, Your Album by the James Gang. It's amazing. It's like the original, and I got Paul McCartney here with me, so we're going to dig into this album. We're going to go in depth, and we're going to look at every track, Funk 42, Funk 49, whatever it's called, at 1-800-449-8255, the fabulous, amazing Clark the Shark show. You're on with Clark the Shark this morning on Wcmy, Classic Rock Radio, Detroit, Sharky. We're here live, and I'm with Paul McCartney. Now, Paul, we were talking before about your guys' relationship with Pete Best, and you were saying how, you and John would hang out. And now let's pick up where we were before. Let's keep this rolling because this is interesting. So what happened in the Beatles back in 1961, 62? What happened was we just fell in love with Ringo's drumming. But didn't you guys think? See, here's what we always say when we talk about Pete Best versus Ringo, or Beatles, Pete Best, Ringo. Pete Best's mom would drive you guys around in a van, and they would manage you. Pete and his mom literally managed the Beatles for 2 years, Paul. Yeah, but I've always said that the Beatles wouldn't be here today without Pete Best, because he basically was the manager. And him and his mum drove us around, in a van for 2 years. They moved all the gear I think from like 1960 to 62. It was over 2 years. And they drove the Beatles around Liverpool. And they might have even driven us to Hamburg. But he was a lousy drummer. Here's the thing about Pete. He was a lousy drummer, and we wanted to get rid of him the whole time. We couldn't find anybody else. That's what John would say. But I'm like, okay, Paul, listen. This is what a lot of people say this. We say, what you could have done with Pete, since he's kind of a good-looking guy and all, is you could have just had him in the band the whole time or whatever on stage, and then just gotten someone else to record in the studio. Brought in one of those black dudes, there's that one or two black guys. They say they really were the Beatles drummers in the studio. And, there's a lot of people that, were like, yeah, the drumming's pretty bad on the Beatles. It couldn't be someone good. So like what John would, John would joke around about Ringo. But no, John, here's the thing, Clark the Shark. We just fell in love with Ringo's drumming. And that's what happened with Pete. He was just this powerhouse back there. Paul, Ringo is a real fucking powerhouse, dude. Ringo's amazing. He's like fucking basically Charlie Watts. Charlie Watts and Ringo are both fucking just so amazing, Paul. My fucking 7-year-old nephew could fucking drum as good as those guys. No, people joke like that, but they're good drummers. Like Ringo was a powerhouse. Pete, he was, the thing about Pete, he was, you know, he was a drag to have around. He's a lousy drummer. We wanted to get rid of him since, you know, long before Hamburg. We wanted to get rid of him in London or Liverpool, everywhere. Couldn't play shows with him because he's so lousy. But yeah, Paul, he was so fucking lousy, dude, that there's all these people then and now that basically thought the Beatles were called Pete Best and the Beatles, or like Pete and the Beatles, or something back then in London. Remember, Paul? No, you know, that's not true, Clark the Shaw. It's something John, or some people would say, you know. But here's the thing: we fell in love with Ringo's drumming because he was an incredible powerhouse back there. You know, he's oh yeah, Paul. He's like fucking Keith Moon. You know, Ringo is like, he's like Carl Palmer, Bobby Caldwell, Ian Pace, Keith Moon. Yeah, totally, dude. I agree. I'd get rid of Pete Best and bring in a guy like Ringo any day, dude. I mean, it's not like you could just replace Pete Best in the fucking studio with some guy, and then live, like you say, no one could hear you guys anyway. Exactly right, because